It's recording now.
Okay, so how do we rewind?
Hi, this lab is going to show you how to sacrifice a mouse and dissect it to get the spleen and thymus. There are a number of ways to sacrifice the mouse. For the most part, if you're doing immunological experiments, you don't want to stress the mouse out too much. One way to sacrifice the mouse is to put the mouse into a jar, add CO2 to the jar or chloroform, and wait till the mouse is dead. But in this way, you're going to stress the mouse out a little bit too much. It's going to be jumping around, getting a little bit hyper, and the immune system changes very quickly. So for the experiments that I generally do in the lab, you don't want to do it in that manner. The way that I'm going to show you today is by cervical dislocation. We have a young C57 black 6 male mouse here, and we're going to try to kill it. The younger ones are a little bit more hyper than the older ones. The way that one does cervical dislocation, the easiest way, is to take the mouse by the tail, let it hang on to something like the metal bars on the cage, come up behind its ears and pull on its tail, and it's dead. Okay? For dissection then, we're going to put it on a dissecting tray, and we're going to add some ethanol to the mouse. Now this ethanol does absolutely nothing except to wet the fur down. It's not going to sterilize it at all. The spleen is on the left side of the mouse, and what we do then is snip the skin and then pull the skin back. Easier said than done. And if you look carefully here, the spleen is right in this region right here. What we're going to do then is dissect the spleen out, lifting the skin up, flipping open the abdominal cavity, take the spleen out, and then you need to carefully lift the spleen up away from the fat that's underneath, cut the spleen out, and then we're going to put it into a petri dish. Okay. The thymus is located at a region just above the heart. And again, you wet the fur down. You can clear the fur from the area that you're interested in. And what we have here is the sternum, the rib cage here, the abdominal cavity is down in this region. If you lift the tip of the sternum up, snip through it, and cut directly through the sternum up into the thoracic cavity, and then you can cut along the side of the rib cage just to displace the ribs off to the side. What you will see now is the mouse heart, which is right here, and the thymus is located just above the heart region. It's a little glandular organ right up here. And what you have to do with this is carefully lift it up. If you cut too deep, you're going to get a lot of blood in this area. But if you can lift the gland up, keep holding it, you will eventually, being very careful, get both thymus lobes out. Then you put the thymus into a petri dish. Alright, So that's how to take the spleen and thymus out of the animal. What we're going to do now is make a single cell suspension of the spleen and thymus. And in order to do that, we take a screen wire mesh, which is now an alcohol. It's just a fine screen like this. We can flame sterilize it. And what you want to make sure you don't do is when it's burning, put it back in the alcohol or put it over the mouse in which you sprayed the alcohol on, because mice do not smell good when they are burning. You put the sterile screen wire into the petri dish, put the organ on top of the screen, and we'll do this also for the spleen. Put the screen into the dish, the organ on top. And then what we want to do is sterilely add 1 milliliter of media that contains 10% bovine serum. And we can add that directly to the petri dish. And then we're ready to take a syringe plunger and push these organs through the screen wire mesh to make a single cell suspension. So what we're going to do is take a syringe. We're going to put a 26 gauge needle onto the end of the syringe. Again, we want to make sure that this is sterile, because what we're going to do with the spleen cells is set them up for a 3-day culture. You take the plunger out of the syringe, and again, keeping the lid somewhat over the petri dish, or if you have a sterile hood to do this in, you can remove it completely. But you take the plunger and push down on the organ into the media, which is called RPMI 1640. You don't want to scrape back and forth on the screen, because if you do that, you're going to rupture the cells. So you want to just go up and down until you're going to leave the membrane casing on the top. The cells now will be in the media. You put your syringe back together. You take a sterile tube, and get this ready. Then what you're going to do is, with the 26 gauge needle, you're going to withdraw the supernatant. And one thing you need to be careful of is a lot of this media may be trapped underneath the screen, and you need to lift the screen up in order to release all the media. Sometimes some pieces of tissue may get stuck in the syringe. You may have to void the syringe to push it out. You want to try to get all the cells up you can. And then you take your sterile tube. Where did I stick it? Oh, right here. Take your sterile tube and you put the single cell suspension into the tube and cap that. And you want to make sure that after you finish with the syringe, that you bend the needle, put the cover back on, and then dispose of the syringe appropriately in a sharps container. And similarly, we're going to do this for the spleen. Where we take a new syringe, take the plunger out, Force the spleen through the screen wire mesh. Again, straight up and down. And this, you might be able to see the membrane casing a little bit more clearly. But try to get all the cells out from that casing. The casing will just stay on top of the screen wire mesh. Put the syringe back together again. And you're ready now to aspirate the media and cells up into the syringe. And place them into a sterile cap tube. Bend the tip, put the cover on, and then we'll place into a sharps container.